Poignant what Matt just said. The World War II Army uniforms are what they would have been wearing when they stormed the beaches of Normandy.
Yeah. Pretty remarkable in terms of the history that we're learning right now. What we've yet to see in some cases are those Sherman tanks and those Renault tanks that we are expecting to see as well. We know that a lot of sort of preventative measures have been taken to ensure that the streets of DC aren't damaged as a result of having these large tanks rolling down Constitution Avenue. General, you had talked to us about how the Army has sort of transitioned over the years. I'm curious, we know that technology has gotten a lot better since 250 years ago. What about combat readiness and sort of the approach to being combat ready? How has that changed?
Yeah, it's an ebb and a flow. Obviously, before conflict, you hope to be ready, you're trained to get ready, and then you amp it up as the conditions change. World War II is a good example of that. 91 divisions were mobilized for World War II. Conclude the airborne division you just saw go by now. Sherman tanks looks like are passing by as well. So yeah, it constantly changes.
Well, to that point, real quick, you said the Sherman tanks are going by as we speak. These are World War II era. Abrams tanks is something we've been speaking quite a lot about, to Larry's point. These were some of the ones out of Fort Cavazos, Texas, that had padding placed on them. There have been metal sheets bolted down across the district to help mitigate some of the damage being done. When we're talking about the difference in some of these vehicles, I'm looking at this one with the star on it behind. Can you identify some of these that we're looking at?
Yeah, so the ones that were in front were the Sherman tank, obviously, different variants of the Sherman tank. Behind that's the half track, what you're seeing with the one individual on the right-hand side. And this tractor here is used to tow artillery pieces on the battlefield. So it's an artillery tractor. So they're all tracked.
When you're thinking of the weight of some of these vehicles, let's talk specifically about the Abrams, because it's a design for direct heavy combat, piece of artillery. Compared to something like this, the weight differential is huge.
It is huge. You're talking close to 72 tons, depending on how it's kitted out, which not even a third of that for a Sherman tank. So very light. They were built to be light. They were built to be agile and fast. Unlike the German counterparts, heavier, but slower, more inclined to mechanical breakdown. Not necessarily and we swarmed them with Shermans.
When you think about the future of the Army, the way technology is sort of infiltrating our lives, how it's making things better, and arguably a little bit more difficult in some cases, depending on who you're talking to, where do you see the Army within the next 10, 15 years?
Yeah, I think General George, the Chief of Staff of the Army, has made it pretty clear. Very uncertain, very volatile, and ever-changing. Certainly from a technological standpoint, from drones, from artificial intelligence, we're seeing it all. And it's happening at a faster pace and very lethal. And we're seeing that play out to this day, whether it be in Ukraine or other places around the world. And so we've got to be ready for that. And so it requires a research, development, industry, partnership with the military to make sure we stay ahead of that power curve.
One of the most poignant parts about today, and something we've heard a little bit about, we've been seeing the president salute the troops as they go by. The president will be giving the oath of enlistment to some 250 soldiers. And to build on Larry's point here, what does that make you feel when you hear that they are still trying to build up our forces, and what that means for our future?
Yeah, I've given the enlisted oath thousands of times to soldiers over a 31-year career. When you raise your right hand and you say the oath, it means a lot. And a brand new soldier, one that's been in for 30 years, it pulls at the heart. I did the officer's oath 7 different times. And so you renew that oath to the Constitution, you renew that oath to the United States, and most importantly to the American people. And so it's extremely important. And again, that's what binds us together, that and the core values, the 7 Army values that we all share, that we'd like to think are also values that are important to the American people.
We have hundreds of thousands of active duty Army personnel spread throughout the entire world. General, can you walk us through what it takes for a man and a woman to become an active duty service member? I'd imagine there's a lot of training that goes involved in that, a lot of investment, both not just from them, but also their families as well. Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it requires a decision not to be a consumer, but a contributor, and decide to raise your right hand and volunteer, not knowing clearly what faces you. Certainly challenges going through basic training, one of the many mobilization and training stations, and then doing your advanced training and then getting to your first unit. And each one of those moves are exciting, right? Because it's new. You're meeting new folks, you're having new challenges, and the Army's going to test you physically, mentally, and in some ways emotionally as you move through that pipeline. And things start happening. You get physically fit, your mental disposition changes. sometimes you don't even realize what's happening, but you're more honorable, you're more patriotic. And a lot of that's from the traditions that the Army has. Everything that we do is based on those traditions, building that unity of forces. And so it's a band of brothers and sisters. And so it requires you to focus on being a good steward and a good brother or sister to your fellow comrades.
Well, to that point, you have over 30 years of service to our country in the military, and the last military parade we saw was 34 years ago in the 90s after the Gulf War. What is it like to see tanks in the streets of D.C.? This moment is such a big moment for our country, regardless of how you feel about it. And so bring me into your thoughts on what it's like to witness and be part of this moment.
Well, it's exciting for one, and it's not the first time. You mentioned that tanks have been on the streets. The Patriot missiles have been on the streets. 8,000 plus soldiers for the DC parade, and then a few days later in New York City, the New York parade. It just is exciting. But I think it's about being part of something special, almost surreal in a way, especially when you've been deployed for 10 months. You don't know what's going to happen. You had fellow comrades that wounded and killed in action. The uncertainty of what's unfolding, regardless of where you are, whether it's Desert Shield and Storm, whether it's Iraq, whether it's Afghanistan. And it is very emotional, and you're doing it with, again, your fellow comrades. And to look out there and see the Americans cheering you on, appreciating what you've done, the sacrifices not just you, but your family has made is important.